Long before the Emperor learned fear, the Imperium learned control. They called it order. Across 1,000 systems, beasts were broken, not bonded. Creatures from death worlds were captured, beaten, conditioned, and forced into obedience through pain. The Imperium believed this was strength. That domination was the only language the universe understood. And for centuries, it worked. War beasts shattered enemy lines. Predators became living weapons. Entire civilizations learned to kneel when imperial banners darkened their skies. The Imperium grew vast, powerful, unquestioned, until one creature refused. The dreadmma had been captured at the cost of 3 battalions and a shattered moon colony. It was stronger than anything the Imperium had ever caged. Smarter, faster, more resilient. They tried to break it. They failed. 7 handlers died screaming. And with every act of cruelty, the beast became more violent, more desperate, more alone. The Imperium saw a monster. They never asked why it fought. They never wondered what it feared. They never considered that the deadliest thing in the chamber was not the beast, but the certainty that pain was the only answer. Then a human arrived, unarmed, unimportant, and foolish enough to believe that even monsters wanted kindness. This is the story of how the galaxy learned the difference between control and connection, and how one simple sentence, spoken softly, proved more powerful than an empire. The palace guards found what remained of handler veteran just after the 3rd bell of dawn. There was very little left to find. The reinforced durasteel bars of the dreadmma's containment cage had been twisted outward, peeled back like soft wire, instead of alloy rated to hold capital-grade war beasts. Blood painted the stone floor in wide, violent arcs. Armor fragments lay scattered across the chamber like broken toys, bent and crushed beyond recognition. Veteran himself had not died quickly. That truth clung to the room like a smell, one that never truly went away once you learned to recognize it. This was the 7th body in 8 months. And Emperor Vakthal was finished being patient. The dreadmma paced inside its enclosure as if nothing had happened. 12 feet at the shoulder. Midnight black scales overlapping like layered armor plating. Every step sent ripples through its muscles, each movement controlled, precise, lethal. Amber eyes burned beneath heavy ridges, never blinking, never resting. It was a creature bred on a death world where survival meant dominance or extinction. Its crystalline fangs caught the chamber lights, translucent and razor-sharp, each one capable of piercing reinforced hull plating. Its tail lashed against the walls, leaving deep gouges in stone and metal alike. The dreadmma was perfection, and it was a disaster. Kelvin, master of beasts, handler supreme, breaker of monsters for over 40 cycles, stood before the Emperor's throne with his head bowed. His reputation had been forged through fear, pain, control. He had bent creatures that shattered armies. He had broken wills that resisted planetary invasions. He had made nightmares kneel. Now 7 handlers were dead. The Grand Summit begins in 2 weeks, Emperor Vakthal said, his voice calm, cold, precise, like the vacuum between stars. Every major power in the galaxy will be present. His claws tapped once against the arm of his throne. I promised them a demonstration of imperial dominance. Kelvin did not raise his eyes. Instead, Vakthal continued, I have a beast that murders everyone who approaches it. Kelvin swallowed. My lord, we have attempted every established method. Pain compliance, neural dominance, pheromone suppression, electroaversive conditioning. The creature resists all of it. Vakthal leaned forward slightly. Then perhaps, Kelvin said carefully, it would be wiser to destroy it and procure another specimen. The chamber went still. Destroy it. Vakthal repeated softly. To destroy the dreadmma would be to admit failure, to admit weakness, to admit that the Imperium could not tame a mere animal. No, Vakthal said. You will find me someone who can control this beast. Kelvin felt cold fear coil in his chest. Or, the Emperor added, I will find a new master of beasts. Kelvin bowed deeply. He had no answers left. Every expert had failed. And with every attempt to break the dreadmma's will, the creature had only grown more violent. That same afternoon, far from the blood-stained enclosure, a routine diplomatic orientation tore past through the palace corridors. Among the gathered representatives walked a human. His name was Joe. He was not important enough to meet the Emperor, barely important enough to be noticed at all. Assigned as Earth's assistant liaison to Throne Prime, Joe walked at the back of the group while a palace functionary recited memorized speeches to beings who barely listened. Humans were new to the galactic community. Weak, soft, unremarkable. Joe felt every ounce of that judgment. Back on Earth, he had been a veterinarian in soul. House pets, rescue animals, zoo predators that terrified the public but trusted him enough to sleep while he worked. When his government selected him for off-world service, he hadn't been able to refuse. His language skills and experience with animals made him useful. Mostly, he felt out of place. The tour entered the palace menagerie. Hundreds of enclosures. Creatures from 100 worlds. Pelcax rushed past most of them with practiced boredom, but when they reached the dreadmma's chamber, he stopped. The Emperor's personal war beast, Pelcax announced proudly. The most dangerous predator ever captured alive. It has killed 7 handlers and remains untamed. Through triple-layered force fields, Joe saw the creature. It paced, back and forth. Same path, same distance, over and over. Its pupils were fully dilated despite the harsh lights. Its body flinched at sudden sounds. It kept its back close to the wall whenever possible. Joe frowned. "It's terrified," he said quietly. Pelcax turned sharply. "What did you say, human?" "The beast," Joe repeated. "It's not aggressive. It's afraid." Laughter rippled through the diplomats. "Afraid?" Pelcax sneered. "It kills trained handlers." "Because it's defending itself," Joe said. "That posture isn't predatory. It's fear response. Something traumatized it." Before Pelcax could respond, alarms screamed. The dreadmma slammed into the containment field. Sparks flew. The force barriers flickered. "Evacuate," Pelcax shouted. But Joe didn't run. He stepped closer. Burn marks. Shock scars. Untreated wounds beneath the scales. This creature had been hurt. Repeatedly. Systematically. Kelvin arrived moments later with handlers carrying neural whips and tranquilizer cannons. "Stand back," Kelvin ordered. "You're going to make it worse," Joe said. Kelvin glared. "Who are you to question Imperial methods?" "Someone who understands animals," Joe replied. "You're reinforcing fear. Fear is the foundation of all training." "Then why hasn't it worked?" Joe asked. The alarm screamed louder. "Let me try." "Silence. You want to enter the enclosure?" Kelvin said. 10 minutes. No weapons. It will kill you. Then you lose a minor diplomat instead of the Emperor's prized beast." Kelvin hesitated, then nodded. An hour later, Joe stood before Emperor Vakthal. "You believe you can tame my dreadmma?" the Emperor asked. "I believe I can help it." Vakthal smiled. 10 minutes, he said. "If you fail, you die." The force field dropped. The dreadmma roared. Joe walked in and sat down, cross-legged, calm, no eye contact. He spoke softly, not in Imperial Common, but in Korean. "It's okay," he whispered. "Nobody's going to hurt you." The galaxy held its breath. Minutes passed. Then food. Not thrown. Not baited. Offered. The dreadmma hesitated. Then ate. 30 minutes became an hour. Joe extended his hand. The dreadmma touched it and lowered its head. "Who's a good boy?" Joe whispered. The beast closed its eyes. Everything changed. Over the next week, Joe cleaned wounds that had never been allowed to heal. Treated infections ignored in favor of pain compliance. Sat quietly for hours, letting the dreadmma learn that stillness did not mean punishment. He named him Durat. Duri, too, for his twin hearts. The handlers watched in disbelief. Kelvin watched in fear. Because every day, it became clearer. The Imperium had been wrong, and humans were different. The Grand Summit arrived. Delegations from across the galaxy filled the palace. The demonstration chamber was packed. Kelvin stood sweating. Because someone had sabotaged the system. Rage stimulants flooded Dur's blood. The dreadmma roared. The old instincts surged. Guards raised weapons. The Emperor leaned forward. Joe stood his ground. "Duri," he said softly. The beast shook. Pain. Fear. Then choice. Dur turned and walked to Joe. Laid his head against the human's chest. The galaxy exhaled. Kelvin was stripped of rank. The Beast Academy was rewritten. Pain was replaced with patience. Fear with trust. Bonded creatures outperformed broken ones. Casualties dropped. Loyalty rose. And across the Imperium, a quiet truth spread. Humans did not dominate. They connected. Years later, Dur rested his graying head on Joe's shoulder. Emperor Vakthal asked, "How did one human change the Imperium?" Joe smiled. Everyone wants to matter. Across the stars, a new question spread. Soft, gentle, powerful enough to change civilizations. Who's a good boy? The answer was always the same. All of them were. The dreadmma no longer paced. Years had softened his scales. Silver traced the edges of his once midnight hide. His movements were slower now, deliberate instead of coiled for violence. Durat rested beneath an open sky, something he had never seen in his first years of life. Joe sat beside him, older too, a few more lines at the corners of his eyes. One hand rested against Dur's massive neck, fingers brushing the familiar rhythm of twin heartbeats beneath thick scales. The Imperial Beast Academy had changed. No screams echoed through its halls anymore. No shock prods. No neural whips. Handlers were taught patience before authority, observation before command, bond before obedience. Graduates no longer bragged about how many creatures they had broken. They spoke instead of trust earned, of bonds formed, of beasts that chose to fight for them, not because they were afraid, but because they cared. The Imperium still possessed strength, but it was no longer hollow. When Emperor Vakthal passed through the gardens that day, he paused at the sight of the aging dreadmma resting peacefully beside a human. Once, the Emperor said quietly, I believed fear was the foundation of power. Joe smiled faintly. And now, Vakthal watched as Dur shifted closer, careful, gentle, impossibly soft for something that had once terrified the galaxy. Now, the Emperor said, I believe power begins with being seen. Joe nodded. Dur lifted his massive head, pressed it lightly against the human's shoulder, and let out a low, contented rumble that echoed through the garden. Joe chuckled. Who's a good boy? The answer no longer needed words. Because across the Imperium, across the stars, across worlds once ruled by pain, a quiet truth had taken root. Monsters were not born. They were made. And with patience, with kindness, with the courage to reach out instead of strike first, they could be unmade. One gentle hand at a time.